Good morning. It is Phoenix Amore. So, I wanted to basically first tell some folks, you cannot teach. When I say teach wisdom, I'm talking about this whole thing when I talk about knowing the word and when God is speaking to certain people in dream state. Again, let me stress that. When you are being trained, as I want to say, just like a Moses or however you want to say it. I always use Moses as an example because of the fact, if you understood the background of Moses being Egyptian and all that, you can see again God saying you have these natural or these gifts or these things you've been taught, right? Again, Moses led an army, so was already skilled in battle, in war, in strategy. I'm stressing all these words for a reason here. So now you had God, right, give Moses some authority. If you understand when it talks about the right hand of God and all that, when people truly taking the time to study it, they understood a lot of the things that I was saying. What some people do is like to front. It is human nature for people to love power. So now when you understand this whole thing where this guy is like, so why did the Greeks try to perpetrate, like they invented trigonometry? They invented a new version of trigonometry. Babylonians, of course, simplistic trigonometry. This is the whole thing when I was talking about Common Core. Imagine Common Core being like the Greek version of trigonometry, where people are like, this is a pain in the butt to learn, when there's this simplistic, right, Babylonian version of trig. So where I was trying to explain to people is the fact that I very much so excelled at trigonometry. That was really the best subject in math that I knew. For some reason it just clicked for me. So now when you talk about Trinity is triangle, like a lot of people know. So the problem again, now when you have this Greek version of trigonometry per se, when people start basically calling on entities and all that, and they get involved in that sort of thing, this is why, and I was not being funny, that need to beef is very intrinsic for them. It's just one of those things. It's instinctive. They have the need to battle each other. So a lot of us will be sitting down and sitting back going, why have they turned a music into some kind of battlefield, and then try to say that's this version of hip-hop. And this is where I for the longest was like, it's not hip-hop, there's some twisted up street version of whatever you want to call it, because of the fact that they basically built that around this whole Greek philosophy. Okay, so now here we go. This is where I get to explain to people, I'm like, I am independent. I'm not affiliated with anybody. I'm not in a coven. That's witchcraft speak. Okay, that's basically when they decide they're going to be in these circles and all that, what they call the coven. Doing sometimes they do little blood, loyalty, whatever spells and all that kind of stuff, and binds, whatever. That's that. Okay, then on the Illuminati aspect of it, it's very similar in the sense that some decide that they're going to be in these little groups or however you want to say it. But when you're speaking of pure religion, right, when you talk about Trinity, again, as some of the more brilliant, right, biblical scholars said, hey, you know what? No, she already said it very correctly. A lot of the times the prophets would start to speak to other deities outside of the Holy Trinity. So, rude awakening, like I tried to explain to a lot of people before, I'm like, the false prophet was not trying to be rude. I'm like, I'm trying to tell y'all, you don't even know the half of what's really going on with that, but do you? Now, when I say the veil broke, at the end of the day, because they'd be so stuck in their own little version of quote-unquote trigonometry, they'd be like, well, so-and-so is a queen. That's fine. Queen over there of some stuff that's 1,000 years past, when the Babylonians already had something there. So it's not as advanced, it's just more complicated. That's why they get arrogant in it, because they say, oh, well, I was able to whatever. Now the veil broke, and guess what? When I said somebody looking for you, they're not even using that Greek stuff on you. They're using that Babylonian type stuff on you. And when you understand what I said when I said Lucifer, Abaddon, all these dark angels, they some bad suckers. That's real. Reason being, God created them. So some of them have that same knowledge as angels that fight on the light side of things. You cannot explain that enough to cocky people. I don't know what it is. It's funny to me because you can sit back and explain to somebody, be careful, right? Just like somebody can tell me, right, and I can explain to them, no, you're right, and let me explain why I said the Trinity got into me. I'm talking about Holy Trinity, right? Making sure that connection with that right deity, Holy Trinity, is always there. And that's why some people are like, dang, she can see for real. Yes, That's because I stay with the right source. So now when you understand witchy people, when they're like, who's her source? What's her source? What are you saying? I'm saying direct connect, as in I have the instilled abilities there. And that's why I broke it down with my natal chart. And that's where you see angles in astrology and how, right? When you talk about squares in somebody's chart, right? Trine, when I said that's smooth. Triangle. So when you have trines and compatibility with somebody, I'm like, that connection goes smooth. That's what I was breaking down to people. When you have those kind of links with somebody, it's very compatible because it just, the energy just flows smooth. That's why you can't have a quote unquote telepathic link with somebody and say, I feel like I can feel what he or she is feeling. It's very real. So with that being said, I wanted to break down the whole yin yang aspect of it. When I started having the whole visions, right, about being on this chessboard, at first I'm like, I'm not understanding this completely, what I'm being shown, and God was saying queen or whatever. Now I'm understanding in a way. It's like, all right, it's saying you have these advanced skills. Okay, so broken down the history of myself, again, being in Science Academy and IT music, you know how they say a lot of musicians are mathematically inclined and all that kind of stuff. So understanding all these things that I've naturally had experience in, correlating directly with the religious spiritual stuff. That's the irony when you get some of the cocky folks who they're just writing some random lyrics and thinking they're doing. I'm just like, okay, that's sloppy. And so now people understand when I was saying that. When I put this up, right, and I talked about the daughter of the flaming sword, some people don't even understand what Excalibur was, right? Because they're watching these movies and sometimes people don't know the history. Like, oh yeah, some random sword. No, when you're talking about that sword, the flaming sword, however you want to say, all that stuff kind of linked up in the sense that people didn't know there really was that sword that was in the Garden of Eden. And when Adam and Eve got kicked out, right, there was, what do you call it, cherubim? Everybody pronounces it cherub. Everybody pronounces it a little different. That had the sword that basically was protecting the tree, right? And that's the whole thing that people don't get when it talks about facing the east and all that stuff is so deep and people don't get it. So if I say something about a sword, they be looking at my apartment, what sword is she talking about? That sword was in the Garden of Eden. So again, spiritual, right, warfare. When some of these silly people dabble in stuff, I said you're gonna end up owing, and the veil is gonna break, and you're not gonna know how to deal with all that stuff that you conjured up. That's very real. That's why when I start separating myself from clients, when I know you're going to see witch doctors, they get all kind of stuff done. No, ma'am. That's when I told people the wolves, having the wolf dreams with the one client, I cut her off. I said, you keep going back to those witches and you have brought some real crazy stuff back with you. So explain it to people. The wolves, the moon card, all these cards when somebody's dabbling in black magic and all this kind of stuff, these are all the symbolisms you'll start to see, the dark symbolisms. In her case, the wolves I start seeing, I said, she dabbling in some stuff she probably should have left alone. That was real. This is that moon card, right? So with that being said, another card that I get when somebody's dabbling in stuff is the Seven of Cups. But the Seven of Cups for me is like delusional, illusions, however you want to say it. If you understand the symbolism behind that, remember when Moses got into a competition, right, with the sorcerers, they were doing all kind of whatever, smoke and mirrors. That would be this. This is the Seven of Cups. That would be what the sorcerers were doing, right? Fiery darts, lies, deception. Even this could even be a card about 7 deadly sins. That's what people have to understand. So when I start getting combinations like this, I'm like somebody dabbling in some stuff, or hallucinations. Even when somebody has a drug problem and they think they're being philosophical and they're being philosophical, as I called it. That's this right here. That's why I tell people, don't get in the booth high, because you're going to end up conjuring up some stuff you don't even know what you're channeling. That's key. So when I talk about the whole thing about chess, right? So you understand here, this lady has this triangle on her head. Now what that's saying is her sight is here. She's not saying anything to this tiger. Why is this tiger not attacking her? Because they have a connection. If you understand the whole aspect of yin and yang, feminine, masculine, phoenix, dragon, whatever you want to call it, yin, yang, all these things are very much so connected. In chess, queen is also known as advisor. So even when I say things like I cannot be led because I lead, right? Leading from behind is just as important as anything. And this is where the balance got out of whack with men and women. Is you had some men feel like, oh, well, I have dominion over the woman. That's not what God said. And then you have some women who get their minds twisted with like the queen is the most powerful. That's not about dominating. That just means that you actually have a stronger spiritual connection to God. So now you understand when you talk about queen per se, that's the advisor to masculine, leading from behind. So again, stressing this lady would be similar to the phoenix, and this tiger would be similar to the dragon. It's all there. So moving right along, when I told people stop conjuring up stuff, because when them suckers come looking for you because you owe, I'm not talking about no financial stuff. This is where you got some of these crazy folks digging up old little stuff where I'm like, don't play those little games because y'all don't understand what I'm talking about. That's why I said that's the thing when you talk about spiritual protection, when God himself gets so annoyed with people who cannot think outside of their little closed-minded boxes or want to front. That's why I call some lawyers sorcerers. They're like, don't just try to tell me I owe some crazy ass fine thinking you're dealing with some little gullible, naive person that gets scared and not going to say you're full of crap, and a judge would laugh you out of the courtroom for being that crazy, trying to charge somebody the $4,000 fine. And don't think that a judge probably didn't read that and say they really tried it. They sure did. We're going to leave that there. That was ridiculous. So moving into what people have conjured up, and I said, all right, you better be who you said you are. Talking about the chessboard, I said, how does the queen, how is she able to move? So what people don't understand, Lucifer being, right, created by God, he pretty smart. And people don't understand that when I said the deceptive aspect to Lucifer. When you get into a spiritual warfare, you better be knowing what you're doing. Because Lucifer, Abaddon, I started talking about these dark angels, look how they can move, right? Abaddon, I said, look at the pentagram, boom, boom, boom. So if you're thinking about warfare, and see some people like, oh, like a little chess, I'm like, no, for real. When I talk about taking hits, okay, understanding when I talk about warfare, I'm saying no, for real. When I had to grab one and body slam them, it is physical, quote unquote, on the spiritual plane. Stressing that because you do have some people who are really schizo. I need to explain that to people yet again. Some folks are really schizo. For me, again, I'm walking around very much so in touch with my identity. Spiritual plane, when I said my spiritual name is Phoenix Amore, that's understanding, again, spiritual warfare, the gifts that I have been given. So when I say you better be who you say you are, when I said I know I'm a bad sucker on the spiritual plane, some fool trying to be me, even when they took my little song, I said, okay, you don't even realize that is basically like saying, bring it, let's go. So the fools that tried to be me, right, or, oh, this is a cool song, when I said y'all being hunted, and I put that picture of Abaddon up saying, you better be able to move like this. And since you can't, it is what it is. So all this whole thing about delicate dance and all that, I'm like, oh my gosh, these people don't get it. So the veil breaking and people on, it is what it is. They have no clue what they're dealing with at this point. And so again, talking about that whole Illuminati and Greek thing, that's why that whole need to dominate or be like, oh, so-and-so's queen and so-and-so. Do you? But at the end of the day, understand when I say things like, I don't have to help you. When I said Abaddon knows, right? Dark angels know when it's somebody that know what they're doing. That person is not there. You're really just fronting because you want to pretend like you have all these skill sets and all that you don't have, and now y'all being hunted. That's why I made it very clear, not by me, but since you want to try to front like you're me, guess what came for you? Take care.